This morning, you won't find most of Neil Young's music. The singer asked the streaming service to pull his work, accusing the platform of spreading COVID misinformation. In a letter to his management team, which he posted online and then deleted, Young wrote this: "I'm doing this because Spotify is spreading fake information about vaccines, potentially causing death to those who believe the disinformation being spread by them. They can have Rogan or Young, not both." Young is referring to Joe Rogan, whose podcast on Spotify reaches an estimated 11 million listeners each episode. Rogan has been criticized for spreading misinformation about COVID and the vaccines. NBC's Emily Ikeda has more on the controversy.
An adverse risk.
We know that there's an increased risk of myocarditis among that age cohort from getting COVID as well, which exceeds the risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true. No. I don't think it's true that there's an increased risk of myocarditis from people catching COVID that are young versus increased risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
No, there is. There's both.
Well, let's look that up. Myocarditis is more common after COVID-19 infection than vaccination. But is this with children? Yeah, we're talking about young people.
Men and boys aged under 30 after this is what it says here.
With children is the issue.
Well, no, we were talking about 15-year-olds.
Well, we're talking about young children.
Male child. 12 to 17.
12 to 17, more likely to develop myocarditis within 3 months of catching COVID at a rate of 450 cases per million infection. This compares to 67 cases of myocarditis per million at the same time following their second dose of Pfizer.
Yes, they're about 8 times likelier to get myocarditis from getting COVID than from getting the vaccine.
That's interesting.
Now,
that is not what I've read before, but also it's like, even when we're reading these things, it's like, what are we getting this from? Was this from the VAERS report? But even from the VAERS reports, when they report this stuff, it's like the amount of people that report, it's the underreporting.
That's Joe Rogan being checked out in real time. It sounds awfully familiar for my friends who get information from Chinese conspiracy websites. When confronted with the facts, they go, "Well, that's not what I heard before," and then questions actually the information. So anyway, so that was him being called out in real time. And as for Spotify, the company says it regrets Neil Young's decision, but hopes to welcome him back soon. Let's bring in right now senior writer for Rolling Stone, Andy Green, epidemiologist at the University of Illinois Chicago School of Public Health. Dr. Katrine Wallace, she was one of the doctors who called on Spotify to take action against Rogan's podcast for spreading COVID misinformation. Also, chief legal correspondent and host of The Beat on MSNBC, Ari Melber. Doctor, let's start with you. You and other doctors put out a letter, sent it to Spotify, complaining about the misinformation that's going on. He's got a massive audience. I think like 10, 11 million people listen to each one of his podcasts. Why did you all feel the need to send a letter to Spotify?
When misinformation we're in a global health emergency right now, and when misinformation is being allowed to spread unchecked on a platform of that size, it creates a sense of false balance where it's like there's two sides to the scientific data, when really there's not. The overwhelming evidence is that the vaccines are safe and effective. And we've normalized between 1,000 and 2,000 deaths per day in this country from largely preventable deaths from COVID. And between June and November of 2021, it was estimated that over 160,000 of those deaths could have been prevented with vaccines. So misinformation about vaccines and about the pandemic is actually killing people.
So when you sent this information to Spotify, any reaction to these group of doctors expressing concern about the misinformation that 11 million people are hearing in podcasts?
We did not get any response from Spotify ourselves. The first time we heard anything was yesterday when they issued a perplexing statement that they have a policy to moderate misinformation on their platform, and they said they have removed about 20,000 podcasts about COVID, but they didn't really say why they were removed or if it was because of misinformation. And there's nothing on their prohibited content listing on their website about the pandemic. So it's really hard to say why those were removed and not these other kind of egregious podcasts that go out to 11 million users.
Yeah. So Andy, let me bring you in here. What's going on with Spotify? They claim they certainly claim to be trying to snuff out anti-vax information, but they're not touching Joe Rogan. Is he just too powerful for Spotify to cross, even when he's putting out dangerous information?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Joe Rogan is their biggest superstar, and they paid him about $100 billion, you know, and he is their biggest draw. And I'm sure they like Neil Young, but Neil is just nowhere near that. So they had to choose, and they picked the star, and they picked the money. At least so far. I think it's possible if a few more big stars leave, it will put more pressure on Spotify, and they might reconsider. It's sort of hard for me to see that now. I think that Neil is a very bold guy, and he puts principle above profit. I'm not sure that many of his peers are going to do the same thing, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, Neil Young's always been that way, Andy. Obviously, he never shies away from a fight or a challenge. It is interesting, though, isn't it, that Spotify has put themselves out as a forward-thinking, progressive, Swedish corporation you just walk through there, you talk to the people who run it. There is no doubt these people like to think of themselves as very forward-thinking. Sure. For their brand to be connected with a guy who is talking about ivermectin and passing out just information that public health officials are horrified by. It is not a tight fit for their corporate culture, is it?
No, but they want to beat Apple and they want to beat Amazon, and they have the same albums that they do. So they want their own content. They want their own stars. And they hired Rogan, and I don't think they quite realized that this would happen. So they're being pretty squeezed right now. But I think they stick with him. You know, it's a sad thing, but they paid him a ton of money. And I think their goal is to just ride this out and pray that no people follow Neil and this kind of goes away.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if other stars will follow Neil Young's lead. It's very funny. The way you started that sentence, you said, no, they want, and you finished it with, they want to beat Apple, but I was going to finish your sentence for you. No, but they want the money. At the end of the day, Ari Melber, it all comes down to the money. Joe Rogan is a big draw. Regardless of the conspiracies that he spreads, regardless of, whether it's Alex Jones type conspiracies or bad information on ivermectin, he has a huge following, and Spotify seems willing to allow him to put out dangerous information because they're getting even wealthier.
Yeah, I think that's the big challenge. I think the science questions here are much clearer than the free speech debate. The doctor just told us 1,000+ preventable deaths. We've been through this long enough. We're journalists. We deal with facts. If the doctors, the scientists are telling you something, that matters. And I would say, Joe, you don't need a heart of gold to think about 1,000 to 2,000 people dying a day. Let's get this right. Let's get the right facts out there. I know we all care about that. Then when you turn to the free speech questions, it's trickier because, yes, I think the financial interests are well documented and that may be driving it. But Spotify is going through the growing pains that Facebook and other entities have gone through, where they first say they have values, then they say they want to make money, but they can do that within their values. Then they say they're just a platform. And, hey, platforms have all kinds of stuff on there, which is true. And then they run into these tests, which is, well, do you support this? And do you support that? And how far out do you want to go? What do your standards and policies really mean?